The paint peeler felt like sandpaper against my blistered palm, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The rhythm of scraping kept my mind from wandering to darker places, like the overdue electric bill tucked beneath a coffee mug in the kitchen, or the way my ex-husband's lawyer had smiled when he'd told me I'd get nothing from the divorce. Nothing, except this crumbling house that had belonged to my grandmother. A structure so broken, it seemed to mirror my own life. "Mom, look what I found." I turned to see my 7-year-old son, Danny, holding up a rusted horseshoe from the overgrown garden. His face was smudged with dirt, his second-hand jeans torn at the knee, but his smile, God, his smile made everything worth it. That smile was the only reason I dragged myself out of bed each morning. The only reason I'd agreed to move into this dilapidated house on the outskirts of the city instead of surrendering to the shelter system. "That's amazing, baby," I called down from my perch on the ladder. "Maybe it'll bring us luck." Luck. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I'd stopped believing in luck the day I'd found my husband in our bed with my former best friend. Or maybe it was when the bank had foreclosed on our home. Or perhaps when I'd realized that my college degree meant nothing when you had a 7-year gap in your resume and desperation written all over your face. The June heat pressed against my skin like a heavy blanket. Sweat dripped down my spine, soaking through the thin fabric of my tank top. The house stood at the end of a long, private road, surrounded by overgrown hedges and ancient oak trees that created pockets of shadow even in midday. It was isolated, a 20-minute drive to the nearest grocery store, but the isolation felt like safety. No one could judge us here. No one could see how far we'd fallen. I scraped harder, watching decades of white paint curl away to reveal the gray wood beneath. The physical labor felt good, purposeful. For the first time in months, I was building something instead of watching everything crumble. The house needed everything: new plumbing, electrical work, roof repairs, but I'd watched enough YouTube videos to tackle the cosmetic work myself. Fresh paint could hide a multitude of sins. "Mom, there's a car coming." I froze, the paint peeler suspended in midair. We never had visitors. The road didn't lead anywhere except to our property and an old abandoned factory further up. I climbed down from the ladder, my legs shaking slightly. From exertion or fear, I wasn't sure. The car that emerged from between the oak trees wasn't just a car. It was a black Mercedes S-Class, the kind with windows so dark you couldn't see inside, the kind that whispered money and power with every gleaming inch of its polished exterior. It moved slowly up our gravel driveway, stones crunching beneath expensive tires, completely out of place against the backdrop of our rotting porch and weed-choked yard. My heart hammered against my ribs. Debt collectors didn't drive cars like that, neither did social workers. "Danny, go inside," I said quietly, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "But Mom, now baby, please." He heard something in my tone that made him obey without further argument, his small feet pattering up the wooden steps. The screen door creaked shut behind him, and I was alone when the Mercedes came to a stop 15 feet from where I stood. For a long moment, nothing happened. I could see my reflection in the tinted window. A thin woman in paint-stained clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, looking every inch like someone who'd been beaten down by life. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. The back door opened. The first thing I noticed was the shoe. Black Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, completely spotless despite our dusty driveway. Then came the rest of him, unfolding from the car with the kind of fluid grace that spoke of complete confidence in his body and his place in the world. He was tall, over 6 feet, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I'd made in the last 6 months. Dark hair, styled but not overly so, with just enough silver at the temples to suggest he was in his early 40s. His face was handsome in a harsh way. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled, but it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Dark, almost black, they fixed on me with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare, as if he could see every secret, every fear, every desperate thought I'd ever had. There was something predatory in that gaze, something that made every instinct scream at me to run. A second man emerged from the driver's seat, broader, wearing a black suit, with the kind of build that suggested violence was part of his job description. He didn't approach, just positioned himself near the front of the car, his eyes scanning our property with professional efficiency. The man in the charcoal suit walked toward me, and I noticed details I wished I hadn't. The way his suit jacket hung perfectly, suggesting custom tailoring. The glint of an expensive watch, Patek Philippe if I wasn't mistaken. Something I'd seen in a magazine once. The faint scent that reached me even from several feet away. Cedar and smoke and something darker, more dangerous. "You're living here now," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was deep, measured, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. Eastern European, maybe, worn smooth by years in America. "Yes." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Is there a problem?" Something flickered in her eyes, amusement, perhaps, or recognition of my attempt at courage. "This property," he continued, moving closer, "belonged to Elena Kowalski, my grandmother." I lifted my chin, trying not to show how much his presence unsettled me. "She left it to me." "I see." He stopped about 5 feet away, close enough that I could see the fine weave of his suit, the way his shirt collar sat perfectly against his throat. Close enough that his presence felt overwhelming, like standing too near a fire. "And you didn't think to inquire about existing arrangements before moving in?" My stomach dropped. "Arrangements? Your grandmother and I had an agreement. This property sits on land that's valuable to certain business interests." He paused, his eyes never leaving mine. "She granted permission for use of the road access to the factory beyond. That arrangement included a monthly payment, which I assume you haven't received." The way he said business interests made it clear we weren't talking about anything legal. Every crime show I'd ever half-watched while folding laundry suddenly flashed through my mind. The isolated location, the abandoned factory, the man in the expensive suit with a driver who looked like he broke bones for a living. "I didn't know," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "No one told me about any agreement." He studied me for a long moment, and I felt like an insect pinned to a board. I was acutely aware of how I must look. Poor, desperate, alone. An easy target. My hands were still covered in paint and dirt. My clothes were stained, and I probably smelled like sweat and desperation. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. "Sarah." I swallowed. "Sarah Chen." "Sarah." He said it slowly like he was tasting it. "I'm Alexei Volkov, and we need to discuss how this arrangement will continue." The name meant nothing to me, but the way his driver's posture had somehow become even more alert when he'd said it suggested it should. Alexei Volkov. It sounded like the name of someone you didn't cross, someone who appeared in newspaper articles about organized crime, someone whose enemies ended up in rivers. "I don't want any trouble," I said. And I heard the plea in my voice, the exhaustion. "I'm just trying to give my son a home. We don't have anywhere else to go." Something changed in his expression, so subtle I almost missed it. His eyes flicked toward the house, where I knew Danny was probably pressed against the window watching, then back to me, a son. Not a question, just an acknowledgement. And the father? Gone. The word came out more bitter than I intended. "It's just us." Alexei nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something. "The previous arrangement was $5,000 a month for road access and discretion about the factory's activities. That will continue. Transferred to your account." He reached into his jacket. I flinched, I couldn't help it, and pulled out a slim wallet. "Additionally, repairs. This house is falling apart." He was right, but hearing him say it made humiliation burn in my chest. "I'm handling the repairs myself." "No," the word was soft but absolute. "You'll hurt yourself. I'll send contractors tomorrow." "I don't need—" "Yes, you do." He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "And you'll accept it, because you have a son to think about. Pride is expensive, Sarah Chen, and you can't afford it." The truth of his words felt like a slap. He was offering me help, but the way he said it made it clear this wasn't charity. This was control. This was him deciding what happened on this property, to this house, to us. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do this?" His eyes darkened, and for just a moment, I saw something beneath the controlled surface. something hungry and possessive that made my heart race for entirely different reasons, because this property is important to me. And now, Sarah, so are you. Before I could process that statement, before I could ask what he meant, a sound split the air, the crack of splintering wood. We both turned to see part of the porch railing give way, the rotted wood finally surrendering to age and neglect. It crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust and debris, exactly where I'd been standing with my ladder just 10 minutes ago. Alexei's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Not roughly, but firmly enough that I couldn't have pulled away if I'd tried. His other hand rose slightly, and his driver was suddenly moving toward the house, speaking rapidly into a phone I hadn't seen him pull out. "You and your son are not staying here tonight," Alexei said, his voice harder than before, allowing no argument. "Pack what you need. You're coming with me." "What?" "No, I can't just—" "The house is structurally unsound. That railing could have killed you." His fingers tightened slightly on my arm, and I felt the strength in them, the barely restrained power. "I told you, Sarah. You're important now. That means I don't take chances with your safety." "You don't even know me," I protested weakly, even as part of my brain was screaming that he was right, that the house was dangerous, that I'd been gambling with our lives by moving in here. His eyes met mine, and what I saw there made my breath catch. Determination, possession, and something that looked almost like recognition, as if he'd been waiting for me without knowing it. "I know enough," he said quietly, "and I'm going to know everything. Now go get your son, Sarah. We're leaving." The way he said it, like it was already decided, like my compliance was inevitable, should have made me angry. Instead, I felt something shift inside me, some survival instinct recognizing that this dangerous man offering help might be the only thing standing between my son and disaster. I pulled my arm from his grip. He let me go immediately and walked toward the house on shaking legs, aware of his eyes following my every step, aware that everything had just changed in ways I couldn't begin to understand. Behind me, I heard him speaking in a language I didn't recognize, his tone sharp with command, and somehow, I knew that walking into that house to pack our bags was the moment my life stopped being my own. Danny's hand was small and sweaty in mine as we stood in the circular driveway of what could only be described as a mansion. Not a house, a mansion. 3 stories of pale stone and floor-to-ceiling windows, with perfectly manicured gardens that probably required a full-time staff. Security cameras were visible at every corner, and I'd counted at least 2 other men in dark suits positioned near the entrance as we'd driven through the iron gates. The drive had taken 40 minutes, Danny chattering nervously in the back seat beside me while Alexei sat in the front, speaking in that same Slavic language to various people on his phone. I'd caught him looking at us in the rearview mirror more than once, his dark eyes unreadable. "Mom? Is this a hotel?" Danny whispered, pressing closer to my side. "Something like that, baby," I murmured, though my heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Alexei had already exited the car, and now he opened my door himself, a gesture that felt both courteous and controlling, as if he needed to dictate even this small action. His hand appeared in my line of vision, palm up, an invitation or a command. I stared at it for a moment, at the calluses I hadn't expected to see on someone who wore suits that expensive, at the scar that ran across his knuckles. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I climbed out on my own, pulling Danny with me. Something flickered in Alexei's eyes. Approval, maybe, or amusement at my small rebellion. "This way," he said simply, and started walking toward the entrance. The interior was even more overwhelming than the exterior. Marble floors reflected the light from a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my entire life. The air smelled like expensive candles and furniture polish. Everything was pristine, cold, beautiful in a way that felt utterly foreign to someone whose last apartment had featured water-stained ceilings and a perpetually broken heater. "Mr. Volkov." A woman appeared from a side hallway. 50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a crisp black dress that screamed, "Housekeeper." Her eyes swept over Danny and me with barely concealed curiosity. "I've prepared the East Wing guest suite as you requested. Thank you, Margareta." Alexei's voice had taken on a different quality here, still commanding but somehow softer. He turned to us. Margareta will show you to your rooms. You'll find everything you need. If you don't, tell her, and it will be provided. We can't stay here, I said, finally finding my voice. This is too much. A hotel would be fine until the house will take weeks to be habitable. He cut me off, not rudely, but with the finality of someone used to making decisions that wouldn't be questioned. You'll stay here. It's safer. Safer from what? His eyes met mine, and I saw shadows there, hints of a world I didn't understand and probably didn't want to. From a house that's falling apart, from being alone and vulnerable in an isolated location, from questions I don't want you to have to answer yet. He paused. Your son needs stability. I'm offering it. The worst part was that he was right. I'd been so desperate to give Danny a home, any home, that I'd ignored the obvious dangers. The house wasn't just old, it was dangerous, and I had no money to stay anywhere else, no family to turn to, no options except this strange, terrifying man who looked at me like I was something he'd decided to keep. Come, dear. Margareta's voice was gentler than her appearance suggested. She smiled at Danny. Are you hungry, young man? The kitchen has fresh cookies. Danny looked up at me, his eyes wide with hope and uncertainty. The word cookies had penetrated his confusion about everything else. I felt a surge of love so intense it physically hurt my baby, who deserved so much more than a mother who couldn't even provide a safe roof over his head. Okay, I said, the word feeling like surrender. Just for a few nights, until arrangements can be made. Alexei nodded, something satisfied settling into his features. I have business to attend to. Margareta will help you get settled. We'll talk more at dinner. 8 o'clock. He walked away before I could protest, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor, and I felt his absence like a physical thing. Relief mixed with something I didn't want to examine too closely. The guest suite was larger than the entire first floor of my grandmother's house. 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting room, each with its own bathroom featuring fixtures that looked like they belonged in a luxury spa. Danny had immediately claimed the bedroom with the window overlooking the gardens, his earlier nervousness forgotten in the excitement of having his own space, something he hadn't had since the divorce. I stood in my assigned bedroom, staring at my reflection in a full-length mirror framed in gold leaf. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who didn't belong here. My clothes were shabby, my hair was a mess, and there was still paint under my fingernails despite my attempts to clean them in the bathroom sink. A knock on the sitting room door made me jump. Come in, I called, expecting Margareta. Instead, 3 women entered carrying garment bags and boxes. The one in front, a severe-looking woman with perfect posture, spoke with a crisp British accent. Mr. Volkov requested we provide you with appropriate attire. I'm Christine, and we'll need to take some measurements. That's not necessary, I said automatically. I have clothes. Christine's eyes flicked over me with professional assessment, and I felt the judgment, even though her expression remained neutral. Mr. Volkov was quite clear. Dinner is formal, and you'll need suitable options for your stay. It will only take a moment. The unspoken message was obvious. Refuse and insult your host. I stood there awkwardly as they measured me, their hands quick and impersonal, and tried not to feel like I was being catalogued, processed, prepared for some purpose I hadn't agreed to. They left behind 6 garment bags, and promised more would arrive tomorrow. When I unzipped the first bag, I found a dress that probably cost more than my car, a deep navy silk that felt like water between my fingers. The others were similar, expensive, elegant, the kind of clothes I'd only ever seen in magazines. I left them hanging and went to check on Danny, finding him in his room arranging the few toys we'd brought on a shelf that could have held 50 times as many. He looked so small in that big space and so happy despite everything. Mom, did you see? They have a pool. Margareta said I could swim tomorrow if you say it's okay. He bounced on his toes, that infectious energy that made me smile despite everything. And she said there's a game room with video games and everything. That sounds wonderful, baby. I smoothed his hair back, needing to touch him, to reassure myself he was real and safe. But remember, this is just temporary, just until our house is fixed. I know. He nodded seriously, then grinned. but it's pretty cool for temporary, right? Yeah, I admitted, pulling him into a hug. It's pretty cool. At 7:45, I stood in front of the mirror again, this time wearing the navy dress. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Hugging curves I'd almost forgotten I had after months of hiding in baggy clothes and exhaustion. I'd washed my hair in a shower that had 6 different settings and smelled like orchids, and even managed to dry it into something presentable with the expensive hairdryer I'd found in a drawer. I looked like a different person, someone who might actually belong in a house like this. The thought terrified me. Margarita had offered to watch Danny. He'd already eaten and was now engrossed in a video game he'd only ever been able to dream about before, and I'd reluctantly agreed. Now I followed her directions down the hallway, my borrowed heels clicking on marble, toward the dining room where Alexei was waiting. He was standing by the window when I entered, still in a suit, but he'd removed the jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms roped with muscle and marked with more scars. He was holding a glass of what looked like whiskey, and the setting sun backlit him in gold, making him look almost unreal, a figure from a painting, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. He turned when he heard my footsteps, and whatever he'd been about to say died on his lips. His eyes traveled over me slowly, deliberately, and I felt that gaze like a physical touch, heat rushing to my skin despite every instinct telling me to be afraid of this man. "You look beautiful," he said finally, his voice rougher than before. "Thank you for the clothes." I tried to keep my voice steady, professional, as if I wore designer dresses every day. "They're too much, but thank you." "They're exactly what you should have been wearing all along." He set down his glass and pulled out a chair at the table, not at the far end, but close, only one seat between us. "Sit. Are you hungry?" I was starving, actually. I'd been too nervous to eat much all day. But sitting down felt like accepting something more than just dinner, like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I sat anyway, because I was hungry, and because Danny was upstairs and safe, and because some part of me wanted to understand this man who'd upended my life in a single afternoon. Margarita appeared with the first course, some kind of soup that smelled incredible, then disappeared like a ghost. We were alone in that enormous dining room, with its table that could seat 20 and its paintings that were probably worth fortunes. "Tell me about your ex-husband," Alexei said abruptly, lifting his soup spoon. "That's a strange dinner conversation." Nevertheless, he watched me over the rim of his spoon. "I want to know." I didn't want to talk about Marcus, didn't want to relive that humiliation with a stranger. But Alexei was waiting, and something in his posture suggested he'd simply outweight any resistance I offered. "We met in college," I said finally, stirring my soup without tasting it. "Married young. I thought we were happy. Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things." I paused. "He's not a bad father, just a terrible husband. He sees Danny sometimes when it's convenient. He left you with nothing. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. His lawyer was better than mine. I got the house no one wanted and debt I didn't know existed. He got everything else. His name." I looked up sharply. "Why?" "Because men who abandon their children deserve consequences." He said it casually, as if discussing the weather, but there was steel beneath the words. "And because everything about you is my concern now. I'm not your concern," I said, more sharply than I intended. "You're being kind, generous even, but that doesn't make me your responsibility." "Doesn't it?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark eyes that seemed to see too much. "You're living on property I use, under my protection, wearing clothes I provided. That makes you mine, Sarah." The word mine hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I didn't want to examine. My heart was racing again, but not entirely from fear. There was something else there, something dangerous and unwanted. "I'm not anyone's," I said quietly. "Not anymore. We'll see." He picked up his wine glass, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. "Eat. You're too thin." The rest of dinner passed in a strange blur of exquisite food and unsettling conversation. Alexei asked questions about Danny, about my life before the divorce, about my grandmother, and I found myself answering despite my better judgment. He was a good listener, focused entirely on me in a way that felt both flattering and predatory, but he offered nothing in return. Every question I asked about his business, his life, his reasons for helping us, was deflected with practiced ease. By the time dessert arrived, I knew no more about Alexei Volkov than I had that afternoon, except that he was very good at making me feel simultaneously safe and in danger. "There's something you should know," he said as we finished coffee, "about your grandmother's arrangement with me." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "The factory beyond your property, it's not abandoned. It's a storage facility for certain goods that require discretion. Your grandmother knew what it was. She took payment to look the other way, and to ensure no one else came asking questions about the traffic on that road. He was telling me, in careful terms, that my sweet grandmother had been complicit in something illegal, that the money she'd left me came from crime." "I don't understand why you're telling me this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you need to understand what staying in that house means, what accepting my help means." He leaned forward, and I was caught in his gaze again, unable to look away. "There are people who would love to know about that property, who would use you to get to me. That's why the house needs to be secure. That's why you and your son need protection. That's why you're here. You're saying we're in danger because I inherited a house." The words came out flat, shocked. "I'm saying you were in danger the moment you moved in, and you didn't even know it." His hand reached across the table, covering mine before I could pull away. His palm was warm, calloused, strong enough to crush my fingers, but gentle in a way that made my breath catch. "But you're not in danger now, Sarah. Not while you're mine to protect." There was that word again. Mine. I should have been terrified. I should have grabbed Danny and run as far and fast as we could. But when I looked into Alexei Volkov's eyes, all I saw was absolute certainty, and the promise that nothing would touch us while he was watching. The terrifying part was how badly I wanted to believe him. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. The house, my grandmother's house, though I was beginning to think of it differently now, was transformed. Every morning I'd receive updates with photos from the contractor Alexei had hired. New roof, new plumbing, electrical rewiring, foundation repairs. The kitchen was being completely renovated. The porch had been rebuilt with wood that would last another 100 years. It should have taken months, but Alexei's money made things move at impossible speeds, and every night, I had dinner with him. It became a ritual. 8 o'clock, the dining room, just the two of us while Danny ate earlier with Margareta and played until bedtime. Alexei would ask his questions, always questions, peeling back layers of my life with surgical precision, and I'd answer, because refusing felt impossible under that dark, unwavering gaze. I learned things about him too, though he never answered directly. The scars on his hands came from his childhood in Moscow. The way he switched between languages on phone calls meant he was coordinating operations across multiple countries. The deference everyone showed him wasn't just respect, it was fear. And the reason his house had more security than most banks was because people had tried to kill him. More than once. I should have been terrified. Some part of me was, but another part, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, felt safer than I had in years. Danny was thriving. He'd gained weight, stopped having nightmares, and talked constantly about the pool and the games and how Mr. Volkov had taught him to play chess. That last part had shocked me. I'd come downstairs one afternoon to find them in the study, Danny's small hand hovering over a pawn, while Alexei watched with something almost like patience. "He's good with him," Margareta had said quietly, appearing beside me with that unnerving ability she had to materialize from nowhere. "I've worked for Mr. Volkov for 15 years. I've never seen him spend time with a child before." I'd watched them for another moment, my heart doing something complicated in my chest, before retreating before either of them noticed me. But it was the small things that truly unsettled me. The way Alexei's eyes followed me whenever we were in the same room. The brush of his hand against my lower back when he guided me through doorways. The expensive clothes that appeared in my closet daily, not just dresses for dinner, but casual wear, workout clothes, even pajamas in silk that felt like sin against my skin. The way he'd somehow learned I liked my coffee with cream and honey, and it appeared at my bedside every morning before I woke. It felt like being claimed in 1,000 tiny ways, and I didn't know how to stop it, didn't know if I wanted to. On the 23rd day, everything changed. I was in the library, because of course this house had a library, 2 stories of books with rolling ladders and leather chairs, trying to read while Danny had his swimming lesson with the instructor Alexei had hired. I'd changed into jeans and a sweater, comfortable clothes after another morning of wearing designer dresses, and was curled in a chair by the window when I heard voices in the hallway. Don't care what Dmitri thinks. The shipment arrives Thursday, and it will be handled according to plan. Alexei's voice, harder than I'd ever heard it. I started to close my book, to announce my presence, but then another voice responded, male, with a thick Russian accent. Dmitri says the Chen woman is a liability, that she asks too many questions, sees too much. He suggests we resolve the situation before it becomes a problem. My blood turned to ice. The Chen woman. Me. Dmitri suggests a lot of things. Alexei's voice was arctic now, deadly. Most of them demonstrate why he'll never be more than an enforcer. The woman and her son are under my protection. That means they're untouchable. Make sure everyone understands that. But boss, she's a civilian. She doesn't understand our world. What if she goes to the police or... The sound of something hitting the wall made me jump. When Alexei spoke again, his voice was soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. Listen very carefully, Victor. Sarah Chen is mine. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me personally. Is that clear enough? Or do I need to demonstrate? A pause. Crystal clear, boss. Good. Now get out. Footsteps retreated rapidly. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart hammering, the book forgotten in my lap. I should have felt grateful that Alexei was protecting us. Instead, I felt trapped, realizing for the first time how completely we'd fallen into his orbit, how impossible it would be to leave even if I wanted to. The library door opened. Alexei stood in the doorway, still wearing the dress shirt and slacks from whatever business he'd been conducting, and his eyes found me immediately. I watched something shift in his expression. A calculation. An assessment. How much did you hear? He asked quietly, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. Enough. My voice was steadier than I felt. Your associate thinks I'm a liability. Dmitri is an idiot. Alexei moved closer, each step deliberate. But he's not wrong that you're in a dangerous position. Because of you. Yes. He didn't deny it, didn't soften it. Because of me. Because you're living in a house I use under my protection, with my money rebuilding it. Because you have dinner with me every night, and wear clothes I buy and let me teach your son chess. He stopped in front of my chair, looming over me. Because everyone in my organization now knows that I have a weakness. And that weakness is you. The word hung between us like a confession. I stood up slowly, needing to not be quite so small in front of him, needing some illusion of power in this conversation. I didn't ask for any of this, I said, and hated how my voice shook. I just wanted a home for my son. A safe place. I didn't ask to become your weakness or your responsibility or whatever this is. I know. Something flickered in his eyes, regret, maybe, or frustration. But it's too late now. You're in this, Sarah. The only question is whether you're going to fight me every step of the way or accept that I'm the only thing keeping you and Danny safe. Safe from threats that only exist because of you. Yes. He stepped closer, and I found myself backed against the bookshelf, surrounded by him. His scent, his heat, his overwhelming presence. But also safe from your ex-husband's lawyers, from debt collectors, from a house that was falling apart around you. Safe from every fear that kept you awake at night before I found you. You didn't find me, I whispered. I was already there. You're the one who decided to keep me. His hand came up to cup my face, and I should have flinched away, but I didn't. His palm was warm against my cheek, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. Yes, he said simply. I did. From the moment I saw you standing in that driveway, exhausted and defiant and trying so hard to be brave for your son, I decided you were mine to keep, mine to protect, mine. That's insane, I breathed, but I didn't pull away from his touch. Probably. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt that touch everywhere. But I stopped pretending to be sane a long time ago, Sarah. I'm a man who takes what he wants and destroys anyone who tries to take it away. And I want you. The confession should have terrified me. Instead, something hot and dangerous unfurled in my stomach, something I'd thought died with my marriage but was apparently only sleeping. You don't even know me, I protested weakly. I know you're strong even when you feel broken. I know you'd do anything for your son. I know you haven't slept properly in months, because I can see the shadows under your eyes, even through the concealer you wear. I know you prefer reading to television, and you bite your lip when you're nervous, and you haven't let yourself want anything for yourself in so long you've forgotten how. His voice had dropped lower, intimate. I know enough, Sarah, and I'm going to know everything. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why do you care? For a long moment, he just looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, something raw and almost vulnerable. There and gone so fast, I might have imagined it. Because you're the first real thing I've seen in 20 years, he said finally. Everyone in my world wants something from me. Power, money, protection, fear. But you? You want nothing except to take care of your son and rebuild a broken house. You look at me and you're afraid. Yes, but you don't grovel. You don't perform. You're just real. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back, and my breath caught as his face moved closer to mine. I'm going to kiss you now, he murmured. And you're going to let me? Because you want this as much as I do, even if you're not ready to admit it yet. He was right. God help me. He was right. I did want it, wanted him, despite everything logical screaming that this was dangerous and wrong and would end badly. When his lips met mine, I didn't pull away. The kiss was nothing like I expected. Not rough or demanding, but almost careful, like I was something precious that might break. His mouth moved against mine with practiced skill, coaxing my lips apart, deepening the kiss until I was gripping his shirt just to stay upright. Heat flooded through me, want that I'd buried under exhaustion and survival, and I kissed him back with a hunger that should have embarrassed me. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard, and his eyes had gone almost black with desire. Alexei, I started, not sure what I was going to say. Mom. We jerked apart as the library door burst open. Danny stood there in his swim trunks, dripping on the expensive carpet, grinning widely. Mom, I can swim. I mean really swim, not just doggy paddle. Do you want to see? I forced myself to breathe, to smile, to be the mother he needed, and not the woman who'd just been kissed senseless by a man who'd admitted to being obsessed with her. That's wonderful, baby. Let me just go, Alexei said quietly, stepping back and giving me space. His voice was controlled again, but his eyes were still hot when they met mine. We'll continue this conversation later. It was a promise and a threat, and it sent shivers down my spine. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the kiss, the conversation, the way Alexei had looked at me like I was something he'd been searching for without knowing it. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and padded downstairs in my silk pajamas, heading for the kitchen to make tea. The house was dark except for ambient lighting, and I moved through it quietly, not wanting to wake anyone. But as I passed Alexei's study, I saw light beneath the door and heard his voice, speaking in Russian. I should have kept walking. I should have given him his privacy. Instead, I found myself stopping, listening. I couldn't understand the words, but I understood the tone, anger, frustration, and something that sounded like fear. His voice rose, sharp with command, then fell to something quieter, more dangerous. Another voice responded, Victor maybe, or one of the other men I'd seen around the property. And Alexei's response was harsh enough that I winced. The conversation ended abruptly. Silence fell, and I was about to flee back upstairs when the study door opened. Alexei stood there, still fully dressed despite the hour, and his eyes found me immediately in the dim hallway. He looked tired, I realized, tired and dangerous and somehow vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice rough. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," I said quickly. "I was just getting tea." He studied me for a moment, then stepped back, holding the door open. "Come in. We should talk." This felt like a test, or maybe a trap. But I walked into his study anyway, into this inner sanctum that smelled like leather and whiskey and him. The door clicked shut behind me, and suddenly the space felt too intimate, too charged with everything unspoken between us. "There's a situation," Alexei said, moving to pour himself a drink from the bar in the corner. "With your ex-husband." My stomach dropped. "What about Marcus? He's been asking questions about where you're living, who you're with. He called the contractors at your house yesterday." Alexei's jaw tightened. "He wants to modify the custody arrangement. Claims you're living with a dangerous man and exposing Danny to unsuitable environments." The room spun slightly. "How do you know this?" "Because I make it my business to know everything that concerns you." He took a drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "His lawyer sent a formal letter today. They're requesting an emergency custody hearing." "No." The word came out strangled. "No, he can't. Danny is all I have. He can't take him. He won't." Alexei set down his glass and crossed to me, his hands gripping my shoulders firmly. "Listen to me, Sarah. He won't take Danny because I won't allow it. I have lawyers who will destroy his case. I have investigators who will find every skeleton in his closet. And I have resources he can't even imagine." "Why would you do that?" Tears burned my eyes. "What do you want from me?" His hands slid up to cup my face, forcing me to meet his gaze. "I want you to stop fighting this. Stop pretending you don't feel what's between us. Stop acting like you're alone when you're not anymore." His voice dropped to something raw, almost desperate. "I want you to be mine, Sarah, completely, in every way that matters." "I don't know how," I whispered. "I don't know how to trust anyone after Marcus. I don't know how to be what you want. Then let me show you." He kissed me again, harder this time, more demanding, and I felt myself surrendering to it. To him, to the inevitable pull that had been there since that first day in my driveway. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, and we were both shaking. "Stay," he murmured. "Not in the guest suite. Here, with me." It was a terrible idea. It was moving too fast and too dangerously, and would complicate everything. But Danny was asleep upstairs, and Marcus was trying to take him. And Alexei was offering protection and want, and something that felt dangerously close to caring. "Okay," I breathed. And I felt the last of my resistance crumble as he pulled me closer. I woke up in Alexei's bed, with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the scent of cedar surrounding me. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then memory crashed back in vivid detail. The kiss in the library, the conversation in his study, the way he'd undressed me slowly, reverently, like I was something precious. The feel of his hands on my skin, his mouth tracing patterns of fire across my body, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer as Heat flooded my face. What had I done? The bed beside me was empty, sheets cool to the touch. He'd been gone for a while. I sat up, pulling the silk sheet around myself, and noticed the note on the pillow beside me. Alexei's handwriting was precise, controlled, like everything else about him. "Sarah. Had to handle business. Stay as long as you like. Margareta will bring breakfast. The custody lawyer arrives at noon. Be ready." The custody lawyer. Reality settled back over me like a cold blanket. Marcus was trying to take Danny, and I'd spent the night in bed with a man whose business associates literally suggested killing me as a solution to their problems. What kind of mother did that make me? Except Danny was happy here, happier than I'd seen him in over a year. And Alexei, for all his danger, had been nothing but kind to my son, more than kind. Attentive, patient, present in ways Marcus had never been even when we were married. I found my clothes, the jeans and sweater from yesterday, neatly folded on a chair, and dressed quickly. My reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a woman I barely recognized. Lips swollen from kissing, color in my cheeks, eyes bright with something I didn't want to name. I looked alive in a way I hadn't in years. I looked like someone who'd been thoroughly claimed. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a thrill through my body that I had no business feeling. Danny was eating breakfast in the sunroom when I found him, Margareta hovering nearby with fresh juice. He looked up with that beautiful smile that made my heart ache. "Mom, Mr. Volkov said we can go see the house today. He said it's almost done and I can pick the color for my room." I slid into the chair beside him, accepting the coffee Margareta offered with a grateful nod. "That sounds wonderful, baby." He also said, Danny paused, suddenly shy. He said maybe we don't have to leave after the house is done, that we could stay here if we wanted. Would that be okay? My breath caught. Alexei had said that to my 7-year-old son before discussing it with me. It was presumptuous, controlling, typical of him, and exactly the kind of stability Danny needed. "We'll see," I said carefully. "A lot is happening right now, and we need to figure things out. Is it because of Dad?" Danny's voice went small. "Margareta said he called here yesterday. Is he mad we're staying with Mr. Volkov?" "Your dad just wants to make sure you're safe and happy," I said, the lie tasting bitter. "That's all." Danny nodded, but his eyes were too old, too knowing. He'd heard the fights before the divorce, knew more than a 7-year-old should about broken promises and selfishness masquerading as love. "I like it here," he said quietly. "Mr. Volkov is nice to me. He doesn't look at his phone when I'm talking like Dad does. And he asked me yesterday what I wanted to be when I grow up, and when I said astronaut, he didn't laugh. He said if that's what I want, he'll make sure I get the best education to make it happen." Oh God. Alexei was winning my son's heart as efficiently as he'd claimed my body, and I didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. "That's very kind of him," I managed. "Do you like him, Mom?" Danny asked, his eyes too perceptive. "The way people like each other in movies?" I could have lied. Should have lied. But something in my son's hopeful expression made me tell the truth. "Yeah, baby. I think I do." His smile was radiant. "Good. You deserve someone nice, someone who makes you smile like you used to." The simple wisdom of children. If only Danny knew that the man making me smile had scars on his knuckles from violence and conducted business that required guards with guns. The lawyer arrived at exactly noon. Elena Volkov, no relation to Alexei despite the shared surname, was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair, a Chanel suit, and eyes that could probably make judges weep. She set up in Alexei's study with files and a laptop and got straight to business. "Your ex-husband is claiming you're living with a known criminal and exposing your son to danger." She flipped through papers with manicured nails. "He's using Mr. Volkov's reputation as leverage. Unfortunately, that reputation exists for a reason." "I'm aware," I said quietly, too aware of Alexei standing behind my chair, his hand resting possessively on my shoulder. "However," Elena continued with a sharp smile, "Marcus Chen has his own problems. 3 DUIs that were buried, a gambling debt of $80,000, and an interesting relationship with his secretary that began while you were still married. Oh, and he's been dodging child support payments for 4 months." I blinked. "How did you—" "I'm very good at my job, Mrs. Chen." Elena's smile turned predatory. "By the time I'm done, the judge will be questioning whether Marcus should have any custody at all. But we need to present a united front. Which means clarifying your relationship with Mr. Volkov." Her eyes flicked between us, noting Alexei's hand on my shoulder, probably reading everything that had happened between us in our body language. "Sarah and Danny are under my protection," Alexei said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "They live in my home by my invitation, as my guests. Elena's tone suggested she knew better. "That's the story we're going with?" "That's the truth," Alexei replied smoothly, "for now." The implication was clear. Eventually, it would be more. Eventually, we wouldn't be guests but permanent fixtures in his life. The presumption should have angered me, but all I felt was a strange relief. Someone was fighting for us, someone powerful enough to win. "All right," Elena said, making notes. "The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday. Sarah, you'll need to testify about the living situation, Danny's well-being, and why you believe this is the best environment for your son. Can you do that?" I thought about the past 3 weeks, Danny's laughter, the security of knowing we had a roof over our heads, the way Alexei had somehow made us feel protected instead of trapped, wanted instead of burdensome. Yes, I said firmly. I can do that. After Elena left, Alexei took us to see the house. His driver, Victor, who apparently no longer thought I should be eliminated, drove us in the Mercedes, Danny chattering excitedly in the back seat about all the things he wanted to do once we moved back in. If we moved back in. That remained unspoken but present between Alexei and me. The transformation was stunning. The house that had been falling apart a month ago now looked like something from a magazine. Fresh paint, a warm cream color that caught the afternoon light, new windows, a rebuilt porch with furniture that invited you to sit and watch the sunset. The garden had been cleared and landscaped, the old oak trees preserved but now surrounded by flowering bushes and stone pathways. Oh my God, I breathed, stepping out of the car. Wait until you see inside, Alexei said, and I heard satisfaction in his voice. The interior was even more impressive. The kitchen gleamed with new appliances and marble countertops. The living room had been opened up, walls removed to create flow and light. Hardwood floors had been refinished to a honey glow. Everything was perfect, beautiful. Exactly what I would have chosen if I'd had unlimited funds and taste. Which I realized with a start, I had. Through Alexei. Danny raced upstairs to see his room, his footsteps echoing in the empty house, and I found myself alone with Alexei in the living room, surrounded by all this expensive beauty. You didn't have to do all this, I said quietly. Yes, I did. He moved closer, backing me against the wall the way he had in the library, his presence overwhelming. This is your home, Sarah. Yours and Danny's. It needs to be perfect. Nothing's perfect. Then as close as money can make it. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. I want you to have choices. Stay here or stay with me. But know that wherever you are, you're mine to protect, mine to care for. Mine. There was that word again, the one that should have made me rebel, but instead made me feel safe in a way I'd never experienced. What if I don't want to be owned? I whispered, even though we both knew it was too late for that question. You're not owned, he corrected, his voice dropping low. You're treasured. There's a difference. You can walk away tomorrow and I won't stop you. But I'll make sure you're safe. I'll make sure Danny has everything he needs. I'll make sure Marcus never hurts you again. His forehead pressed against mine. You're free, Sarah, but you're also mine. Both things can be true. Before I could respond, Danny's voice rang out from upstairs. Mom, come see. My room is huge. Alexei smiled, a real smile, rare and devastating, and stepped back. Go, enjoy this. It's yours. I went upstairs on shaking legs, my mind spinning. Danny's room was indeed huge, painted a soft blue-gray with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking the garden. There was even a desk perfect for homework, and Danny was already planning where everything would go. But my attention caught on the master bedroom across the hall. I walked to the doorway and froze. It had been completely redone. A king-sized bed with luxurious linens. An attached bathroom with a soaking tub and separate shower. A walk-in closet that was already partially full, with clothes I recognized. The dresses from Alexei's house. The casual wear. Everything he'd bought me. Moved here. Waiting. He'd assumed I'd stay. Or maybe he'd simply decided it, the way he decided everything. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest, something dangerous and wanting and terrifyingly close to love. That night, back at Alexei's mansion, everything came to a head. Marcus called. Alexei's security had been monitoring my phone, something I'd agreed to after learning about the custody suit, and the call came through the house line instead. Alexei answered, putting it on speaker before I could protest. Where the hell is Sarah? Marcus's voice was slurred slightly. Drinking, probably. I know she's there with you. I know what you are, Volkov. Mr. Chen. Alexei's voice was ice. Sarah and Danny are under my protection. If you have legal concerns, address them through your lawyer. Protection? Marcus laughed bitterly. You're a criminal. A mobster. You think I'm going to let my son live with someone like you? Your son, Alexei repeated softly, dangerously. The son you haven't seen in 6 weeks. The son whose support payments you've missed. The son whose mother you left destitute after cleaning out joint accounts. That son? Silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus, Alexei continued, and I heard the steel beneath the smooth words. You're going to withdraw the custody suit. You're going to start paying support on time. You're going to be a father. Or you're going to disappear from their lives entirely. Those are your options. You can't threaten me. That wasn't a threat. Threats imply possibility. This is certainty. Alexei's eyes met mine across the study, dark and fierce. Sarah and Danny are mine now. Touch them, hurt them, or cause them any distress, and you'll discover exactly what kind of man I am. Do we understand each other? Another pause. Longer this time. Then, you're insane. Probably, Alexei agreed. But I'm also the man standing between you and the people you claim to care about. Choose wisely. He hung up without waiting for a response. I stood there, heart pounding, unsure whether to be furious at his presumption or grateful for his protection. You can't just... I can, he interrupted, moving around the desk toward me. I did, and I'll do worse if he pushes me. This is insane, I said, echoing Marcus's words. This whole situation is insane. I barely know you, Alexei. We've known each other less than a month, and you're talking about me and Danny like we're yours. Like we belong to you. Don't you? He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't feel it, Sarah. Tell me you don't feel claimed. Tell me you don't want this as much as I do. I couldn't. God help me. I couldn't lie to him. I'm scared, I whispered instead. I'm scared of how much I want this. How much I want you, despite everything logical telling me to run. I'm scared of what it means that I let you into my life, into my son's life, into my bed. I'm scared because this feels inevitable, and I don't know if that's real or if I'm just so desperate for security that I'm confusing gratitude with something else. His hands came up to frame my face, gentle despite their capacity for violence. It's real, Solnishko. It's been real since I saw you standing in that driveway trying to rebuild a broken house with your bare hands. You're not confused. You're not desperate. You're mine. And somewhere in the past month, I became yours too. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, tears burning my eyes. I don't know how to trust someone again. I don't know how to let someone take care of me without losing myself. Then let me teach you. He kissed me softly, carefully. Let me show you that not all men are your ex-husband. Let me prove that I'll protect what's mine with everything I have. Another kiss. Deeper. Let me love you the way you deserve, Sarah. The way you should have been loved all along. The word love hung between us, too big and too soon, and absolutely terrifying in its rightness. Okay, I breathed against his mouth. Okay. And when he lifted me into his arms and carried me to his bedroom, I let myself surrender completely. Let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this dangerous man with blood on his hands and obsession in his eyes could be the safety I'd been searching for all along. The custody hearing took place on a gray Wednesday morning that felt like a metaphor for everything hanging in the balance. I wore one of the designer dresses Alexei had bought me, navy again, professional, appropriate, and tried not to shake as Victor drove us to the courthouse. Alexei sat beside me in the back seat, his hand covering mine, solid and warm and impossibly calm. You'll be fine, he murmured. Just tell the truth. The truth. That I'd moved into a crumbling house with my 7-year-old son and no plan beyond survival. That a man involved in organized crime had appeared in my driveway and decided we belonged to him. That in 5 weeks, I'd let him into every corner of my life and fallen for him, despite every logical reason not to. When we arrived, Elena was waiting on the courthouse steps, looking sharp and confident. She'd warned me that Marcus's lawyer would try to paint Alexei as dangerous, me as irresponsible, and Danny as being exposed to criminal elements, but she'd also said not to worry. She had ammunition of her own. I still worried. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, less dramatic. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked like he billed by the minute. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes, which was probably for the best. I didn't know what I'd see there: guilt, anger, or the same indifference that had characterized the final year of our marriage. Alexei sat in the gallery behind me, and I felt his presence like a physical weight, protective, possessive, absolutely unmovable. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Martinez, called the hearing to order. Marcus's lawyer stood first, laying out his case with practiced efficiency. His client was concerned about the welfare of his son. The mother was living with a man of questionable character. Alexei Volkov had known connections to organized crime, multiple ongoing investigations, and represented a clear danger to a minor child. The living situation was unstable, inappropriate, and Marcus was requesting primary custody with supervised visitation for me until I could establish a suitable independent residence. I felt sick listening to it, even knowing it was coming. They made it sound so damning, so clear-cut. Then Elena stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Your Honor, Mr. Chen's sudden interest in his son's welfare is touching, if somewhat belated. She moved with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. Let's examine the facts. Mr. Chen abandoned his family 18 months ago, after conducting a year-long affair with his secretary. He provided no financial support during the divorce proceedings, forcing Mrs. Chen and their son into poverty. He cleaned out joint bank accounts, leaving her with nothing. He hasn't paid child support in 4 months, despite a court order. He's seen his son exactly 3 times this year, always for less than an hour, usually canceling at the last minute. She paused, letting that sink in. Now, let's discuss Mrs. Chen's current situation. Yes, she's living in a home owned by Mr. Volkov. A home that was left to her by her grandmother and which Mr. Volkov has spent over $200,000 renovating to ensure it's safe and suitable for a child. Mrs. Chen and her son have their own private wing in Mr. Volkov's residence while this work is completed. The child has thrived in this environment. His grades have improved, he's gained healthy weight, he's enrolled in swimming lessons, and has access to educational resources his father never provided. Elena turned to face Marcus directly. As for Mr. Volkov's character, yes, he's a businessman with diverse interests, some of which have attracted attention. But he has no criminal record. He's never been charged with a crime. And more importantly, he's shown more care and concern for Danny Chen in 5 weeks than his biological father has in 18 months. She laid out document after document. Danny's improved school performance, a letter from his swimming instructor praising his confidence, even a psychological evaluation showing he was happy and well-adjusted. Then came the evidence against Marcus, the DUIs, the gambling debts, the affair, missed support payments, everything. By the time she finished, Marcus looked gray, and his lawyer looked defeated. Mrs. Chen, Judge Martinez said, turning to me, I'd like to hear from you directly. Can you tell me about your current living situation? I stood on shaking legs and told the truth. About the house falling apart, about meeting Alexei, about his offer of help, about Danny's happiness, his safety, the stability we'd found. I didn't mention the dinners, the kisses, the way Alexei looked at me like I was something precious. But somehow, Judge Martinez seemed to know anyway. And your relationship with Mr. Volkov? She asked directly. He's been very kind to us, I said carefully. More than kind. He's given us security when we had none. He's been patient and gentle with my son. Whatever else he might be, Your Honor, with us he's been nothing but protective. Protective. Judge Martinez studied me for a long moment. Mrs. Chen, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen every variation of custody dispute imaginable, and I can tell you that this case is highly unusual. She looked over my shoulder, presumably at Alexei. Mr. Volkov, would you approach the bench? I heard movement behind me, then Alexei was walking past, every inch of him radiating controlled power. He stopped before the judge, his posture respectful, but not subservient. Mr. Volkov, Judge Martinez said, her voice stern. I'm going to ask you something directly, and I want an honest answer. What is your interest in this woman and her child?" The courtroom was utterly silent. I held my breath. "Sarah and Danny are under my protection," Alexei said, his voice clear and firm. "That protection is absolute and permanent. I care for them both deeply, and I intend to ensure they have everything they need for the rest of their lives. Are you in a romantic relationship with Mrs. Chen?" "Yes, Your Honor." My heart stopped. He'd just admitted it, publicly, in a court of law, and you understand that your reputation, deserved or not, makes this complicated. "I do." Alexei's voice didn't waver, "But I also understand that Danny Chen has a father who abandoned him and a mother who would die for him. My reputation is irrelevant compared to that child's well-being. Whatever I am, whatever people think I am, I would never let harm come to either of them." Judge Martinez leaned back in her chair, studying him with sharp eyes. Then she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. Your record as a father is, frankly, appalling. You've shown minimal interest in your son's life, failed to provide financial support, and only filed this custody challenge after learning your ex-wife had found stability with another man." Her voice hardened. "This appears to be motivated by spite, rather than genuine concern for your child's welfare." Marcus opened his mouth, but his lawyer put a hand on his arm, silencing him. "Mrs. Chen," the judge continued, turning to me, "your current situation is unconventional. I'll grant you that. But your son is clearly thriving. You've demonstrated commitment to his well-being, and the evidence shows you're providing a stable, nurturing environment." She paused. "However, I am concerned about the long-term implications of your relationship with Mr. Volkov. If that relationship were to end badly, it could impact your son's stability." My stomach dropped. "Therefore," Judge Martinez continued, "here is my ruling. Primary custody remains with Mrs. Chen. Mr. Chen will have supervised visitation rights, 2 hours every other weekend, to be gradually increased if he demonstrates consistent involvement and responsibility. Child support payments will resume immediately, with back payments to be made within 60 days or face contempt charges." She looked at Marcus. "You'll also attend a parenting class and submit to random drug and alcohol testing for the next 6 months." Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed. "As for you, Mrs. Chen," the judge added, "I'm going to require a follow-up evaluation in 6 months. I want to ensure Danny continues to thrive in this environment. If anything changes, if there are any signs of instability or danger, we'll revisit this arrangement. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," I managed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I'm watching this situation closely, but her eyes were kind when they met mine. Go take care of your son. And Mr. Volkov," she turned to Alexei, "I sincerely hope you're as honorable as you claim to be, because if anything happens to that child under your watch, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you face consequences. Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, Your Honor," Alexei said, and I heard steel in his voice. "Nothing will happen to him. You have my word." Judge Martinez nodded once, then banged her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." Outside the courthouse, I finally let myself breathe. Elena left with promises to handle all the paperwork. Marcus skulked away with his lawyer, and I stood on the steps with Alexei's arm around my waist, feeling like I'd just survived a battle. "You did well," he murmured against my hair. "I'm proud of you." "You told her we were together," I said, still processing. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." He turned me to face him, right there on the courthouse steps with people streaming past. "I'm not ashamed of you, Sarah. I'm not hiding what you are to me. Not from judges, not from my associates, not from anyone." "What am I to you?" I asked, needing to hear him say it again. His hand came up to cup my face, and his eyes were intense, burning with something that made my heart race. "Everything," he said simply. "You're everything." We picked Danny up from Margareta. He'd spent the morning at the mansion, carefully kept away from the courthouse, and drove to the renovated house. He needed to see it finished, needed to understand that this was real, that we were safe now. Danny raced through the rooms, shouting with joy at his perfect bedroom, the game room Alexei had added as a surprise, The backyard with its new playground equipment. His laughter echoed through the house, bright and pure, and exactly what I needed to hear. Alexei and I stood in the kitchen, watching through the window as Danny climbed on the swings, and his arm came around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. "Move back in if you want," he said quietly. "It's yours. But Danny can keep his room at my place, too. You both can. Come and go as you please." "You're giving me choice," I said, understanding. "After controlling everything else, you're giving me this." "I'm giving you freedom," he corrected, "because you deserve it. Because you're mine by choice, not by force. I want you to choose me, Sarah. Every day, even when it's hard, even when my world scares you." I turned in his arms, looking up at his face, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd crashed into my life and refused to leave. "Your world terrifies me," I admitted. "The violence, the secrets, the way people look at you with fear. But you know what terrifies me more? What? How safe I feel with you anyway. How much I trust you despite every logical reason not to. How completely you've claimed my heart in just 5 weeks." I reached up to touch his face, feeling the rough stubble under my fingers. "I don't just choose you, Alexei. I choose this. Whatever this is between us, I choose to be yours." His kiss was fierce, claiming, full of promise and possession. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Marry me," he said abruptly. I stared at him. "What?" "Marry me." He said it again, more firmly. "Not today, not tomorrow, when you're ready. But no, that's where this is going, Solnishko. I'm not a man who does anything halfway. If you're mine, then you're mine completely. Forever." It was too fast. It was insane. It was everything I should have refused. "Ask me again in 6 months," I said instead. "After the follow-up evaluation. After Danny's had time to adjust. After we've figured out how to make this crazy situation work." "That's not a no," Alexei observed, his eyes lighting with satisfaction. "No," I agreed, smiling despite myself. "It's not a no." 6 months later, on a cold December evening, Danny and I stood in front of Alexei's Christmas tree, a massive thing that took up half the living room and was covered in lights and ornaments that probably cost more than my first car. Danny was wearing pajamas Margareta had bought him, his hair still damp from his bath, and he was practically vibrating with excitement about opening presents in the morning. "But first," Alexei had said, "he had something important to discuss." He knelt in front of Danny, not in front of me, but in front of my son, and pulled out a small box. Inside were 2 rings, one clearly an engagement ring, diamond and platinum, beautiful and elegant. The other was smaller, simpler, a band with a small blue stone. "Danny," Alexei said seriously, "I'd like to ask your mother to marry me. But I need your permission first, because this isn't just about her and me. It's about all of us becoming a family, so I'm asking you, would it be okay if I married your mom and became your stepfather?" Danny's eyes went huge. He looked at the rings, then at Alexei, then at me. "You mean we'd stay here forever? This would be our real home?" "This is already your real home," Alexei said gently. "But yes, forever. You'd be my son, Danny. Not by blood, but by choice. And I'd do everything in my power to make you and your mother happy for the rest of my life." "Can I call you Dad?" Danny whispered. I saw Alexei's control crack for just a moment, emotion flickering across his face. "I would be honored if you did." Danny threw his arms around Alexei's neck, and I watched this dangerous man, this mob boss with scars and secrets and blood on his hands, hold my son with infinite gentleness, his eyes squeezed shut like he was holding something precious. Then Alexei stood, Danny still clinging to him, and turned to me. "So, Sarah Chen, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Danny for the rest of our lives? Will you be mine, officially and permanently?" I looked at them. This man who'd terrified me and claimed me, and showed me what it meant to be truly protected. And my son, who was smiling wider than I'd seen in years. I thought about the past 6 months, the follow-up evaluation that had gone perfectly. The way Marcus had faded from our lives, seeing Danny only occasionally, and never pushing for more, cowed by Elena's threats and Alexei's reputation. The way Danny called this place home, and Alexei's men had learned to smile when they saw us. The way Margareta had started teaching me to cook Russian food, and Victor had shown Danny how to play chess when Alexei was busy. The way Alexei looked at me every morning like I was a miracle, and held me every night like I might disappear. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." He kissed me with Danny laughing between us, and when he slipped the ring on my finger, it felt like a promise, a vow, a claiming that was finally complete. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony in the garden of our house, the house that Alexei had rebuilt but insisted remained in my name, that was legally and completely mine even as we shared it. Danny stood beside us as ring-bearer, beaming in his tiny suit. Margareta cried. Victor actually smiled. Elena attended with her husband, looking satisfied with how her case had turned out. Marcus sent a card that I threw away without reading. My vows were simple. I was broken when you found me, and you helped me rebuild. Not just a house, but a life, a future, a family. I choose you, Alexei, today and always. His were longer, in Russian first, something beautiful that made Margareta sob harder. Then in English. You were supposed to be a complication, Sarah, a problem to manage. Instead, you became my reason, my purpose, the one real thing in a world of lies and shadows. I vow to protect you, cherish you, and love you until my last breath. You and Danny are mine, and I am yours, forever. When he kissed me, I tasted promise and possession, and a future I'd never dared to dream of. 2 years after that, I stood in the same garden, watching Danny play soccer with 3 other children, the sons of Alexei's associates, who'd become friends despite the strangeness of their father's world. Danny was 10 now, confident and happy, calling Alexei Dad without hesitation, and complaining about his homework with all the normalcy of childhood. Alexei came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his hand settling protectively over my swollen belly. 7 months pregnant with a daughter we'd already decided to name Elena, after the lawyer who'd saved us, after the grandmother who'd inadvertently brought us together. Happy? He murmured against my neck. I leaned back against him, this man who'd claimed me in a driveway 2 years ago and never let go, who'd given me everything I'd needed without asking, who'd loved my son like his own, and given me a family I'd thought was forever lost. Terrified, I admitted. Your world still scares me, the things you do, the dangers that exist. I wake up some nights in a panic, convinced something will happen to you or Danny or this baby. And yet, he turned me in his arms, his dark eyes knowing, and yet I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. I reached up to touch his face, still marveling that I was allowed this intimacy, this closeness with someone so powerful and dangerous. You rebuilt me, Alexei, not just my house. Me. No, Solnishko. He kissed me softly. You rebuilt yourself. I just made sure you had the tools and the space to do it safely. You were always strong. I just gave you permission to see it. Danny's laughter rang out across the garden, bright and pure. Inside the house, Margareta was preparing dinner. Tomorrow, Alexei had meetings I didn't ask about. Next week, we'd take Danny to his first day at the expensive private school Alexei had insisted on. In 7 weeks, our daughter would be born into a world of wealth and danger and fierce, protective love. It wasn't the life I'd imagined when I'd moved into my grandmother's falling-apart house with my 7-year-old son, and nothing but desperation and hope. It wasn't safe or normal or anything I could have planned, but it was mine. We were his, and he was ours. And somehow, impossibly, that broken beginning had transformed into the family I'd always wanted, built on foundations of renovated houses and dangerous men and the kind of love that claimed you completely and never let go. I love you, I whispered against Alexei's mouth. I know, he said, his voice warm with satisfaction and possession. You're mine, after all. You were always going to love me. It was inevitable. The arrogance should have annoyed me. Instead, I just smiled and kissed him again, surrounded by the sound of children's laughter and the scent of flowers and the feeling of absolute, terrifying, perfect safety. He was right, after all. It had been inevitable from the moment he'd knocked on my door.